We're so excited to have Julian Doan with us. Hey Julian, welcome to the W.
Hi John, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to be with you. And I wanted to start off by talking about the kinds of themes that appeal to your artistic sensibility, because it really catches me, which is you want to explore sort of the crevices in human expression and thinking, but do it with humor and some levity. That seems like a really difficult motif. Tell us a little bit about how you're drawn to that.
Well, my film sort of explores, a very personal topic for me, experiencing my own dad's passing. And I think I take a lot of it from him, honestly, that he kind of viewed death with like a sense of lightness. And I find that I'm just drawn to kind of like deconstruction of ideas about, things like death and the way we kind of think we should behave societally, and that oftentimes just comes up in me noticing very absurd behavior, kind of the way that when you're all standing in the room with a dying person, that everyone's body language kind of changes and everyone kind of starts to feel like they have to fall into line of like this somber tone and somber attitude, when really it should also kind of be celebratory in a way, but then that kind of feels wrong too and maybe disrespectful. So yeah, I'm just drawn to kind of like the sort of awkward intersection of like those two sort of experiences of living, I suppose.
And your film just takes us, it's like a jolt, the way you bring us into the storyline. I mean, we're literally there in this intimate and intense place and space. We have the wind chimes blowing and you can even hear the wind. And then all of a sudden, so you're in one frame of mind, and then all of a sudden, here come the caretakers. We go from this intimate sort of somber mode to this like other world. How did you intentionally decide to combine those two seemingly disparate emotions?
To watch a movie and to watch a death scene, you can kind of cut around a lot of this sort of perfunctory business of death, but like to live it out in real life, I was like, oh my God, I have to now see the very sort of like unsavory, kind of uninteresting elements that we have to do. They have to come take the body out. They needed to ask us, like, did the nurse confirm the time of death? Because otherwise they can't do their job. To which, and then in the film, the mother nods and then the woman replies, great. Which was an ad lib from Molly, the actress, which I just thought was so funny. My grandmother was Buddhist, so in their tradition, we had to like leave his body alone for 8 hours after he died before we could do anything to it. So it's like we just had all day to sit around, and during that time, you can't just like sit around being traumatized and emotional for 8 hours straight. You're just gonna do things like go for a walk, eat lunch, go to the bathroom, just like regular everyday stuff. So I kind of wanted to just slam those two things together.
Well, as a person who's been in the room many times myself, it seems so realistic to me. Like I've been in that room. I've been in that room as one of the children. I've been in the room as a friend. It felt like it was realistic. Where did you film the scenes?
So we actually filmed the film in my father's actual house. The bedroom scene takes place in the same exact bedroom that my dad died in 3 years ago. So it was, I kind of always saw it that way in my head. And when we started prepping for the film, initially we were going to shoot it on a stage because one of our producers had access to a stage for free. And then about a week and a half before shooting, the stage fell through. And I was a little nervous about asking my stepmom if we could shoot in her house, just knowing the content and, wondering if it would be kind of painful to kind of revisit that. But she was really cool about it and she was really excited. It was very meaningful, I think, for me to actually get to make it in the actual place that inspired the story. There's a picture of, there's a painting of my dad on his wedding day in the film. And the hospital bed that the father character is lying in is actually the bed that my grandfather passed away in, that my grandma let me borrow. So, I don't know, it's very special for me and for us to make the film there.
Well, and the film, and of course, filming it in that space, so honoring of your father. I mean, what do you think your dad would think of this film?
I think you'd like it. I know, you know, he had cancer for 2 years, and we never once saw him cry or sort of, you know, kind of like lose it. I was there the day that he got diagnosed. And when the doctor told him that he had brain cancer, his response was just to shrug and go, well, things happen. You know, that's life. Like that was just the way he saw things. So I think something like this, I think it would tickle him.
Well, it's a beautiful tribute, and I'm sure he would love it. But so, laughter through tears is my favorite sensibility in watching a film. It's very difficult to do it, and so we're watching your film, and then here it comes. Here comes the raspberry. So, I mean, you want to talk about the moment of like release and relief. I mean, what a surprise, the raspberry. You know, you and I have talked, you know, I call them Zerberts, but, you know, it's your movie. So tell us about the raspberry.
Yeah, I think if we called it Zerbert, it'd probably maybe give a little too much away. It wasn't originally in the script. I was writing the script, you know, sort of based on all of this stuff I was experiencing with my dad. And then I was with my partner and also the producer on this film, Brianna. I was just fooling around with her. I was trying to blow a raspberry Zerbert on her stomach, and she was trying to play dead. And we just sort of off of that riffed and thought about what it would be like if that was how you check to see if someone was dead. And then I wrote it into this short. And it, you know, once Ray, the lead actor who plays the son, read the script, he thought it was really poignant and like kind of sad and tragic. And I think him reading it that way, I think it made the short better. Like it informed, you know, how we kind of come out of the raspberry. I think that was really crucial. Before, you know, rather than it just being like a sort of punchline or a joke, we talked a lot about like what it meant to Ray to do the raspberry and like what his reasonings would be. And the fact that it just feels like the nail in the coffin, you know, he does this raspberry and then he just pulls the blanket back over his father to kind of, you know, seal the deal and kind of close the casket. It's like the last thing he's ever going to moment he's ever going to have with his dad. And he just like, Ray does this thing that it even surprised me, to be honest. My jaw was like on the floor when he did it. And we scheduled the shoot in a way where Ray asked if we can, you know, build up throughout the day to that moment. We wanted to shoot that as late in the day as possible. And so we shot all the other stuff, and I think it gave him like the runway to kind of build up to the emotion. And then, you know, everything that's in the film is his first take of that raspberry. And the snot is real too. We've been asked if it's CGI or VFX, but no, that's real snot coming out of his nose.
Real snot. You heard it here on the W with Julian Doan. I've seen your film so many times now, and what really strikes me is you take this really intense storyline, this roller coaster of emotions, but behind all of that, in a short 7 minutes, you have family dynamics, relationships, the fact that everyone grieves differently, that there's not one way or another to grieve. How did it come to you to tell sort of all of that and to be able to do it in such a short, efficient time frame?
Well, firstly, I want to say I'm so like honored that people find it short and efficient, because the script is actually only barely 3 pages. So the cut ended up being, you know, over twice as long. The script had a very clear, I think I had a clear, you know, point A and point B. Obviously, I knew where I wanted to start it. I wanted to kind of, like you said, sort of throw you smack dab into the middle of watching someone die. I felt I wanted to kind of like tackle death in this very blunt, you know, realistic way. And then of course I knew we were where we wanted it to end up. You know, once we started getting the cast in, like it was a matter of trying to figure out like, how do we make this story interesting for all of these actors and give them something to play and give them something, you know, emotionally resonant to work with. So I did go through the script again after we got the cast in and kind of balanced out some of the lines and did some rewriting in the week before we shot it, you know, to kind of make sure there was something the other son would say and that the daughter would say, and also using those as elements, like, you know, to have the main son watch his siblings say goodbye and then feel that, you know, he needed to come up with, I think there's like almost this like underlying elephant in the room. You know, I don't want to speak for my siblings, but like almost like this like competitive nature of like who's got like a more meaningful goodbye, and it has to speak to your personal relationship with this person. So I think having the his brother and his sister say something that he has to watch and then be like, oh my God, okay, I have to come up with something better than what they said. Well, I guess a question for you is like, what do you think about, or maybe, you know, the Windrider folks about, you know, kind of saying goodbye to someone? You know, how do you kind of like move through knowing whether you've kind of like said it all or done everything you needed to do?
Well, you're not supposed to be able to just, you know, ask me questions, because those are like really hard questions. I just think the way you told this story, I think and why it resonated so much with me and why I know that our community will love it is because it's very personal. And so you told the story from a very, very personal point of view and did it with enough, you know, humor to let us off the hook of only having just the grieving process. And so I think why we're attracted to films like Raspberry and to filmmakers like yourself is that you actually do the work of taking us inside of a very personal story, which opens up the conversation that may be applicable outside of your personal journey. And so what I'm really interested in is to see how the ongoing Windrider conversations are sort of sparked by your beautiful film and this conversations. I know in our community, we try to move away from binary thinking, like there's a right way or a wrong way, or there's up or down. We try to have a more directional point of view and a more open sort of sensibility. And we just think that stories like this do exactly what our community really loves.
No, that's wonderful to hear. And I think, you know, obviously film is a method of communication and voice. And I think for me, making this film felt like my way of speaking to people about the experience, because I think a lot of what I was thinking was really, it felt kind of impossible to describe or put into words every time I was trying to kind of explain to my friends or family or whoever I was talking to about what the experience was like. And part of the journey for me through going with that and kind of like butting up against, my stepmom and then my grandma, different faiths than me, was a journey for me to realize that like there needed to be space for all of us, that grief was different, that there needed to be space for all of us to kind of grieve in our own ways, and that there wasn't like what I thought was the wrong way to grieve was not wrong, that it was, we all had our own right ways.
Well, bravo. I mean, you created place and space. You gave room and breath for a deeply personal topic and story, and you let all of us come, and you invited us to come into your journey, both as a person and as a filmmaker. And so, Julian Doan, Raspberry, phenomenal film. Thank you for your time, and it's been great having you on the W.
Oh, thanks, John. I'm honored.